Hi folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is Season 16, Episode 3. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we go. Once again, great to have you with me. Thank you so much for joining me. We spent some time last week talking about refining our vision, setting our goals for retirement, and putting some numbers on it, right? Really important that we do that. So now that we know where we're going, we need to just stop and take stock of where we are now. And we need to really understand all the provision that we've already made towards our goal of financial independence, right? That's where we're going today. You know, it's important not to lose track of where we're at. Sometimes we, amass all kinds of different bits of money and policies and plans and stuff. It's important to take stock and know where we are. So today we're talking about getting current. So after the main body of the show, as usual, I'll look at the most recent review that's been left, announce what we're going to be talking about next week. But before any of that, you know the drill by now. This podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my friends at Seven Investment Management. They've been helping me out here since the spring of 2011, which is just nuts. It shows incredible fortitude on their part and a lot of trust on their part as well. So I'm really grateful to them for continuing to support what I'm doing here. Please do check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Definitely go check them out. Okay, like I said, most of us amass all kinds of pensions and investments over our working lives. The majority of us, it's true to say, I think, are not perhaps intentional enough about staying on top of things, keeping them tidy as we go along. I know there's going to be people listening to this who object to that statement. I'm absolutely 100% on top of all my financial situation, but not everybody is, and I would venture that most are not. But before we can move forward, we do need to get current on our provision for retirement. So we're going to get deeply practical today, right? Remember, notes, links, everything you need to know from today's show are at the show notes. And it's the only link you need to remember. So if you're out and about walking the dog, cutting the grass, probably not because it's February, but if you're out and about and you can't write anything down right now, this is the only link you need to remember, okay? meaningfulmoney.tv/HS3, meaningfulmoney.tv/HS3. That's for Home Straight. Episode 3. Let's have a look at what you need to know first. Okay, first thing I think we need to, I want to say no, but really sort of accept, if you like, is that we probably have more stuff than we think, right? It's so easy to lose track of plans and pensions and investments over time. By the time most of us are, say, 50 years old, we've probably had anywhere between 5 and 10 jobs, maybe more. Each of those probably had some kind of pension scheme attached. Maybe, we've got investment accounts here and there, some money that our great aunt put aside for us, who knows what else, right? If you're a couple, of course, you can multiply that complexity by 2 at least. Some of us are better than others at keeping track of this stuff, but if you haven't been great about keeping on top of it up to now, it really is time to get with the program, right? So we're going to put more detail about how to do that in just a minute. Second thing we need to know, and really get this, folks, this is so important. Simple is best, right? Simple is best. It always is. There's an assumption in some quarters that complex financial affairs are some kind of a badge of honor, okay? It's like, look how complex my financial affairs are, aren't I? Smart and sophisticated. I've met clients with an insanely complicated set of financial arrangements, from multiple regular savings accounts with money being shifted around each month to capture a slightly higher interest rate, all the way up to completely unnecessary SAS pensions. Those are particularly popular with property investors in some quarters. People come to me with spreadsheets with so many lines on them, it can be hard to see what's where. But those same people kind of get concerned and a little angsty when I start talking about consolidation and simplification. So let's be quite clear here, right? I see no reason at all, really, why most people would need any more than one pension pot and one investment account, right? Now, there are exceptions, of course. One is clearly where the numbers are very large. Then, yes, of course, I can see the advantage in some kind of diversification. The other is where there are old plans with unusual benefits, and good benefits, so maybe they need to be retained. If you're a high earner and there are advantages to, specialist investments like VCTs and EISs, you might have some of those too. DB pensions, final salary pensions, they don't apply, obviously. If you're lucky to have one of those, then that's clearly a valuable benefit. If you've got more than one, even more so. But one pension fund and one investment account is generally enough for us mere mortals, right? And yet, people insist in opening accounts here, there, and everywhere. They see an advert, they think, oh, that looks good, I'll have a slice of that. And it's another account open, which just makes their life more difficult. Harder to manage, certainly harder, I think, than it needs to be. Now, as you approach retirement, I think it will generally serve you very well to simplify, keep things as straightforward as possible. You're going to have enough to think about, right, over the next few years, and particularly as you make the transition into retirement. So simplify, it'll serve you well. Third thing we need to know is, it's a question to keep in mind, to consider as you look at each of your plans, right? It's a simple question. This will serve you well. It's a little bit like, if anybody's read Marie Kondo's book or seen the series on Netflix, how to sort of tidy up and all that sort of stuff. She says, does this spark joy? This thing that I'm thinking of keeping or getting rid of, does it spark joy? The question when it comes to your pensions and investments and stuff is nothing about joy. Is this the best place for this money? Is it the best place for this money? Best? Define best, Pete. Right, okay, I will. All right. Simply, best, I think, means, is the current home for this money, where it is now, is it the most cost-effective way of achieving what I need to achieve? Okay, let's take a pension fund as an example, a pension pot that you've got. If that pension pot doesn't allow for flexible drawdown, say, it probably isn't going to serve you very well into retirement, right? You're going to need to shift it at some point, probably. So why not now? Well, there may be investment reasons why not now. There may be added benefits, weird guaranteed annuity rates, right? There's always reasons, but that's part of asking this question. Why would you not consolidate it and simplify it and tidy things up? If that pension fund does allow flexi access drawdown, and you've got another pension which also does, well, ask yourself which is the lowest charging pot. That's a good place to start. Cheap isn't always best, though, as we all know. So if the cheapest option doesn't offer you all the investment options that you might want to choose from, then maybe the cheaper pot should be combined with the slightly more expensive but more full-featured one, right? So best, is this the best place for this money? It means best for you and your circumstances, right? That was nice and woolly, wasn't it? Right? So we need to keep things simple. Ideally, I think we should reduce the number of plans that we have to give ourselves the best chance of being able to manage our way through the next few years of this home straight towards retirement. Okay, here's what we need to do. Right, the first thing we're going to need to do is to collect all of our files and our information together, right? Get it all together in one massive pile. I did a book review of a book called Getting Things Done the other day, and this is the first thing that Dave Allen suggests in his book as well. Just get everything together, one big pile. Don't try and sort it yet. We're just getting things together. So every envelope that you've opened, looked at the contents, and then put the contents back in the envelope. Yes, get all those out as well. Don't ever do that again. That's very naughty. If you've got digital records, obviously you'll need to go through those too. But when it comes to investment and pension accounts, chances are you're probably still getting paper statements. Okay? I'm going to put a link in the notes back to an episode I did in season 6 called Auditing Your Paperwork. If you're bad at maintaining a good filing system, be honest with yourself, then that episode will really help you. It's one of the episodes I'm most proud of, actually. It's exactly the system that I use for managing my own financial paperwork, all my paperwork, actually. So once you've got this sort of mountain of paper in front of you, right, I suggest you do 3 sweeps through it, right? Firstly, sort the piles into savings accounts, that's cash, bank, building society, investment accounts, pensions, and insurances, right? 4 sort of categories. Savings accounts, investment accounts, pensions, and insurances. You might need a pile labelled stuff I have no idea about as well. Okay, we'll perhaps get to that a bit later. Once you've done that first sweep, go through it all again and go through each of your 4 piles and sort them into piles of unique plans, right? So collect everything together for legal and general pension policy number XYZ123456. Get all of that into one pile, right? And do that for every plan that you can find a unique policy number for. Really important to go by policy numbers. Policy numbers do sometimes change through the life of a policy. We all know that, you might have started with a pension with, XYZ Life Insurance Company in 1990, but it's probably changed its name 6 times since then. But usually a policy number won't change. It does sometimes, but rarely. So go through each pile and sort it all out into individual plans by policy number. Finally, put everything in each pile into date order with the most recent stuff on top. Okay? So we've got 4 piles, possibly 5 if there's a pile for stuff I've no idea about. But we're going to, and then we've sorted all that into individual plans. And then each plan, we need to go through and sort them into date order with the most recent stuff first, right? So you should have really your most recent statement at the top of each pile. All right, now we're going to deal with pensions first. This is the second thing we need to do. Deal with pensions first. And I want you to take a piece of paper and make a list of each plan that you've found paperwork for, right? Next, think back over your career, just like I mentioned last week. Are there any gaps where you think you should have pensions, but it doesn't look like you've got any paperwork for? If that's the case, then you're going to need to do some digging, okay? The Government Pension Tracing Service might help. There's a link to that in the notes. For each pension plan you've got, find the most recent statement. If that statement is more than a year old, then you're going to need to contact the provider of that plan and get a current statement from them. And I've got a bunch of questions for you to ask when you ring the provider, okay? And do ring. It can be a pain. You might spend some time on hold, but do ring the provider. You're more likely probably to get a clear answer than if you email. So ask these questions of your pension provider. How much is in the plan? Is anything being paid into the plan currently? How is the fund currently invested? What are the investment options in the plan? Is there a fund list? When is the retirement date? What are my options at retirement? Are there any guaranteed benefits or safeguarded rights in the plan? Will I lose these if I transfer away? Who are the nominated beneficiaries if I die? What are the costs of the plan? Are there any charges if I transfer away? Make a sheet of all that info for each plan. The key part, of course, is the value, right? But when deciding whether or not to simplify or consolidate, you'll need all that other info too, so you can weigh the pros and cons of transferring. Maybe create a 1-page sheet for each plan and keep it at the top of your file for that plan, because that then will serve as a sort of at-a-glance summary sheet that you can refer to quickly. You'll be pleased to know that I've created a template for such a sheet, which you might find useful. Okay, so there's a link to that in the notes. Just a template, downloadable thing that you can use essentially as a cheat sheet to get that information from your provider. And then that same sheet of paper can just be your sort of header sheet in your file, if you like, for each plan. So that's pensions. Get all that information together. Third thing we need to do is to do the same exercise essentially, but for investments and savings. Now, fortunately, these are generally much simpler than pensions. They tend to have fewer historical wrinkles and, weird benefits and stuff like that attached, particularly on the older stuff. So generally much simpler. So once again, separate each of your plans into its own pile, organized in date order with the newest stuff on the top. And again, if you don't have a statement dated within the last year, you need to call the provider and ask for one. And while you're at it, ask these questions. How much is in the plan? Is anything being paid into the plan currently? How is the fund currently invested? What are the investment options? Is there a fund list? What are the costs of the plan? Are there any charges if I transfer away? All right, slightly shorter list. Again, there's a sort of cheat sheet for that that you can download from the show notes. Obviously, bank and building society accounts, they're the simplest form of investment. All you really need to know is how much is in there, okay? Might be that you've got some fixed term investments, maybe even some structured products, which you can't break before a certain date. If that's the case, then make a note of that date on the calendar with a reminder 4 weeks earlier so you can begin the process of withdrawal if you decide that's the right thing to do. The last thing you want is stuff automatically rolling over. That's not very intentional, right? 4, life insurance. Might be that you've got some life insurance, health insurance, income protection, all that sort of stuff, and you should get current on all this stuff too. Now, unless these have an investment element, you may not have been getting regular statements. You probably won't, in fact. Chances are you haven't heard anything from the provider since you took out the policy, or since the provider changed its name, as they all seem to do. So this time, your questions for each provider are as follows. What is the remaining term on the policy? What is the sum assured? Is it level, decreasing, or increasing? How much is the premium? Does it ever increase? Is the policy held in trust? If so, who are the beneficiaries? Will the policy be reviewed in the future? What are the options at the end of the policy? Again, summarize each policy on a one-page document. Use the template from the show notes as a guide. Okay? Finally, you're going to want to summarize, gather all of the outline information onto all these plans into a very quick summary document so that you can see the combined value of your pensions, investments, savings, and insurances in one place. Now, that can be a spreadsheet or a printed page, whatever it is that works best for you. Now, if you've never been very good at managing your financial paperwork, then all of that stuff above might just sound like an ordeal, right? Hopefully, by making it fairly turnkey for you, using the sort of templates that are on the show notes, it shouldn't be too much of a burden. But it does still take some work, right? So rather than attack it all in one go, that might take a while, maybe just commit to calling one provider per day in your lunch break, right? If you've got 5 providers, you'll be done in a week. If you've got 50 providers, then it'll take a bit longer. Sort through one pile of paperwork for one policy after dinner, and then call it a day. Do another pile tomorrow, okay? Buy a pack of sort of cardboard files and some sticky labels so that you can build a sort of uniform filing system. Again, much more on that in that old episode from season 6. I'll put the link in the notes. Once you've got a filing system built, it's so much easier to maintain. The problem is that most of us never build a filing system, and it just, the longer we leave it, the worse it gets. Usually the thought of completing a filing project like this is much worse than actually doing it. And I'm telling you, when you get this stuff in place, it's a huge release of sort of psychic angst, right? You can just relax knowing that your paperwork is in order. So there's real value there. And hopefully just by making it, step by step as we've done today, that's what you need to do. Okay, talk about what we're going to be discussing next week in just a minute. But here is a review. This is from The Tales, titled, Who's Going to Keep Me Company on My Dog Walks Now? I first came across this podcast in August 2018, right after playing around with my pension funds with no clue what I was doing. Less than 12 months on, I know what a multi-asset passive fund is and that I chose mine to be high risk. I have now listened to every episode released. Amazing. Even some of the pension season twice. So I only have 3 episodes left before I will need to start waiting for them to be released each week. Pete, you're a legend. Thank you. And I thank you for stepping behind that microphone all that time ago. I look forward to seeing what the Academy has to offer and all the seasons you've already planned. Thanks, Claire. Thank you, Claire. Top tail. Really appreciate it. If you like what you're hear on the show, then please do leave me a review wherever you're listening to this. If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, then meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes is the link to go to leave me a review, just like The Tales did. But anyway you're listening, please do leave me a review. It massively helps. Just keeps me near the top of the rankings so that more folks can hear about Meaningful Money. Don't forget Meaningful Academy, Phase 1, which we call Financial Foundations. That is open to everybody. Okay, so if you're not at the retirement stage yet that we're talking about in this season, but instead you're just looking to get started with your finances, this is going to be perfect for you. It covers everything from a money mindset to how to set useful goals, setting and sticking to a budget, debt elimination, insurance, savings, investing. It's a real thorough grounding on everything you need to know, but really importantly, very practical about what you need to do to get your finances in order. Okay, it really is my best thinking, if you like, distilled in one place on how to do this stuff. Loads of video lessons, worksheets, calculators, everything that you need to get your personal financial journey off on the right foot. Meaningfulacademy.com is everything you need to know is there. Don't forget, you get 25% off as a podcast listener if you use the coupon code podcast25. That's podcast25, all one word. Right, next time we are going to be talking about making sure things are in the right place. I'm calling that episode Positioning Your Pieces, a bit of a chess analogy there. Now that you know what you're working with, because of the work we've done in today's episode, we know where we are now. We now need to set things up to serve you really well over the next few years and into the great transition itself. Okay, so we know where we are. Now we need to move things around in the best way to serve ourselves in the best way going forward. Make sense? Right, that's it, folks, for this session. Hope you enjoyed it. Questions, comments, show notes, everything is there, including the cheat sheets. meaningfulmoney.tv/HS3. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.